All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Psycho's Platters, always powered by coffee each and every time. Today, we're going to go off and we're going to do another episode of the famous, infamous, just weird, strange, twisted Jukebox from Hell. That's right. We're on the scorecards, ladies and gentlemen. If you're following along, we are at episode 15. That's right. 15, we are going to explore. I have my research here, of course. Before I mention it to you, if you haven't seen my cheap trick, The Doctor, the last episode we did from 1986, when you got some time, go take a look at this. But today, we're looking at March 1976's Three Dog Night American Pastime. That's right. Here's the front, here's the back. This is actually a very interesting little gatefold. This one here, a slight cutout on a record collecting standpoint. I'll show you what it looks like. So you have this kind of an inner sleeve followed by, of course, by 1976 you're looking at this kind of a label for ABC. All right. No ABC Dunhill. That was done quite some time ago, and but this one here, released in March 1976, their 14th and final studio album. That's right. They would not go on. They would not go on and do another studio album. Now they did do an EP later in the 80s, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's get down to it. So, like I said, American Pastime, released in March 1976. The previous album was May 1975's Coming Down Your Way, which was your last album, should I say last full album to have Danny Hutton, Corey Wells, and Chuck Negrin. All right, your main three singers of Three Dog Night. That one went to 70 on the Billboard charts for Cashbox. Remember Cashbox? That was a long time ago for that magazine. Number 44. It was a little bit better for that album. But when you get down to it here for American Pastime, Billboard has it at 123, and Cashbox it's 155. So not a really good showing here for this last album of Three Dog Night. Now, the only song, I should explain quickly, I'm sorry. Danny Hutton in late 1975 gets booted out of the band, allegedly for substance issues. But from what I heard, everybody in that band had substance issues, so I don't know. Some, I guess, were better than others. So Danny Hutton let go in late 1975. He was replaced by Jay Gruska. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He was a solo artist and songwriter prior to joining Three Dog Night. If I remember correctly, I think it was, late 1975 as well. So the only song that Corey Wells and Chuck Negrin sing together on is the single Everybody's a Masterpiece, which only made it to number 44 on the singles charts for Billboard. Now, your musicians you happen to have on this particular album? Well, you still have out of the original Three Dog Night backing band, okay, because you had 7 musicians total. So Jimmy Greenspoon, he's pretty much the only one left. Dad was there since day one. He's on keyboards, of course. These other ones here were on the last album before this, at least. You got Al Siner, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, on bass. He was originally a member of the American Breed, you know, Bend Me, Shake Me, that great song. And he also was in Rufus for the first couple years. And if I remember correctly, he plays bass on my favorite, Tell Me Something Good, which is, of course, is a Stevie Wonder song. Also, you happen to have Dennis Belfield, who also was in Rufus too. So you've got a couple of Rufus transplants, if you will. Skip Conte, he's on keys also and other things. He was on Blues Image, you know, good old Ride Captain Ride, that song. Jeff Porcaro, of course, Toto drummer extraordinaire, session drummer extraordinaire. He's on most of this album. And then you've got Ed Green, who he originally, he's also a session drummer, but he's drummed for people like Bobby Blue Bland, Jeff Beck in 1976, and the Sparks in 1977. So you have all these people on this album, that's right. So, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, if you will. 9 tracks here together, 9 tracks. Track 1, as we said, Everybody's a Masterpiece, the single. Chuck sings this one, definitely R&B/disco tinged. Could have been a better song. Now, that's another thing about this album that threw me for a loop a little bit. I did not get this album when it first came out. I'll explain that story at the end of the video, but because I didn't even know of its existence back in '76. But a lot of these tracks they do have an R&B, light disco flavor to them. Most, not all, okay? So it is a little different than your previous Three Dog Night albums. Just throwing that out there. Track 2, Easy Evil. Alan O'Day wrote this song, and John Kay from Steppenwolf covered it too. This Corey sung song is a nice slow burner with interesting flute and keyboard showings up a little bit. This maybe should have been the single. In my opinion, I think Easy Evil would have had a better chart showing. Maybe they could have done Easy Evil and Everybody's a Masterpiece. That maybe would have been a better single. Track 3, Billy the Kid. Wow, what a great Chuck sung song. Say that 5 times fast. It's an R&B cooker, and love the harmonies on this one too. Billy the Kid, I Know What You Did Indeed. Track 4, Mellow Down. Now here's your Danny song on the album here, okay? Now, from what I'm led to believe, this song was an outtake from either Hard Labor from 1974 or Coming Down Your Way from 1975. We don't really know, but it's on this album, I guess, to give the minor illusion that at least the 3 are still together, okay? I could be wrong on that too. But your Danny song number, I think, could have seen this also as a single if he didn't leave Three Dog Night. I could have seen that for that. Track 5, Yellow Beach Umbrella. Corey sung song. I really dig this song. Nice piano-driven piece. And to me, anyway, it has a cross between a Nielsen-Newman vibe, and of course it ends with Crashing Waves of the Sea. A nice, pleasant way to end side 1 of this album. Track 6, Hang On. A nice, funky Chuck song. I said funky. Truth. With that wah-wah guitar and other elements, it feels actually like I've heard some of this melody before, but maybe I'm crazy. Seriously, it does sound a little like something I've heard from the early to mid-70s here, and I can't put my finger on it. Track 7, Southbound. Corey sung song. That's a funky piece that to me at times sounds like mid to late 1970s Doobie Brothers. It does. Track 8, the B-side to their only single, Drive On, Ride On. Another Corey one. A nice little piece with horns and female backing chorus. Can see this on any mid-1970s R&B album, soul album. I can see it. You know, anybody could have done this track, and it would have fit right in there. And then we close out with track 9, Dance the Night Away. No, it's not cover of Van Halen. That doesn't happen for about another year or 2. This here, it's a Chuck. Chuck is back to finish this album off. It's a beautiful number here with nice piano and harmonies. And we close out American Pastime, that's right. So the afterwards of this whole entire thing is that, well, the breakup ended in August of 1976 after having a final show in late July 1976. In 1981, majority of the original band. You had Danny and Chuck and Corey are back, along with most of the original band in 1981. In 1983, they do release on Passport Records, It's a Jungle. It's a 5-song EP. It did better than sort of this on the charts, at least the same. Well, no, wait a minute. Actually, no, it didn't. I'm sorry. I'm getting my facts confused. Actually, that EP didn't do very well, but it was for a combination of reasons. I'm told Passport Records was in a bit of a bind at that time, and there was maybe some distribution issues. So you've got that EP would be the last thing that would be recorded by the original trio of singers with most of that original backing band. It sold about, over time, about 250,000 copies though. I'd say seek that one out as well if you're a completist. In December 1985, Chuck gets booted out. October 21st, 2015, so 30 years almost later, Corey Wells dies, all right? So what are we looking at here? Okay, 2023, Three Dog Night is out on the road, but it's really not Three Dog Night, all right? It's Danny Hutton, the only original, and his tribute band, okay? I wouldn't recommend it. Please don't do it, okay? And by the way, there was somebody that asked me in one of my live streams if Chuck tried to rejoin the band. If I remember correctly, and maybe I'm going to send this to Chuck Negrin, and maybe he can correct me or add some stories to this in the comments eventually. But I think if I remember correctly, there was 2 opportunities, but the dysfunction, not with Chuck, but the dysfunction between Corey and Danny and other people is kind of what kept him away. And I hate to say this, maybe that was a smart thing. When Corey died, Chuck gave an olive branch to Danny, and Danny decided to stomp on it, allegedly. And I'm just like, boy, oh boy, whatever. But it's a shell of a band now. Enjoy the classic album lineups. Chuck puts out decent solo albums. Go check his stuff out too. His last solo album he did actually has a couple unreleased Three Dog Night. He maybe can clarify better. It's either mid-70s or maybe it's some stuff from It's a Jungle. I'm not sure, but it's some nice stuff on his last solo album. So, like I told you previously, I didn't end up knowing about this album when it came out in March of 1976. How I found out about this, as goofy as this is going to sound, is in the early 90s, alright? Best Buy used to sell, I don't know how they got a hold of them, but they did. They had this big bin, sort of 50-cent still-sealed albums. I know for a fact I spent between $5 and $10 that day, and this was in there. So yeah, I spent 50 cents on this. So what am I saying basically about this album? It's a good album. It's not a great album, okay? Once again, I tell you that it's got R&B and disco tinged on it for most of the album. That's not necessarily a problem per se. They were going maybe with the changing times. Remember, most of Three Dogs' hits were not written by them. They were written by outside writers. That was their formula, okay? It's just, obviously you can tell by now, even I guess starting from Coming Down Your Way into this, that the band was falling apart and it needed to die at that time. But this is still a nice album. I personally think, to be honest with you, this should have been in the top 50 or top 60, okay? I think it should have gotten a lot better than the 123 that Billboard put for this thing. So let me ask you, did you end up buying this album when it first came out in 1976, or Have you ever, are you a Three Dog Night fan? If you are, what's your favorite album or song? Did you get to see them live? I came this close, 10 years ago, to seeing the Corey Danny version for free. Okay? And of course, it was a hush-hush show, but for Walmart people. And of course, I didn't find out about it until after the fact. Like hours later, I'm like, that's great. So now you may be asking yourself, and even if you didn't, you're still going to know anyway, what's the next episode of Jukebox From Hell? Well, we're going to go almost 10 years forward this time to November 1985. This super group, and boy were they super. That first album they did, oh, the second album, sorta. You get to the third album, and this was another one, I hate to admit this. Remember that Best Buy clearance bin? I found this in there for 50 cents in the early 90s, okay? We're going to be exploring the third album from November 1985 on Geffen Records from the supergroup Asia and Asia's Astra. That's right. Nice little Roger Dean cover here, though, isn't it? That'll be on the next episode of Jukebox From Hell. And as always, guys, I hope you guys are taking care of yourself. Try to stay cool. It's brutal in 2/3 of the country for the heat wave here. Remember the Psycho Promise, always powered by coffee each and every time. If you have suggestions for future Jukebox From Hell episodes, leave them in the comments too. And once again, thank you and take care.